Hello! Today's assignment is going to be done on Procreate. What we're going to do is take that photo that we did for homework, so a stack that includes at least 3 items and 1 hardcover book minimum, and we're going to trace it in Procreate. That way, when we turn this into our major project, it's easy for us to see those angles and make sure that we get them as accurately as possible. So here you can see I added a picture and then I traced on top of it, and I used different colors to help me make notes on top to help me remember all the angles and all the meeting points for the corners. So to start this out, we're going to go into Procreate, we're going to hit a new screen size for our new canvas, and we are going to add in that photo that we took. So you're going to go into your actions, insert a photo, and there you go. You can see that mine goes really high up on the edge, and I want to leave a little bit of room for notes, so I'm just going to take that and pull it down a little bit. Not a big deal. So on my layers now, I've opened that up. I'm going to rename that photo. And I don't want to draw on my photo at all, so I'm just going to lock that for now, just to make sure that if I try to draw on it, it won't let me do that. So that's just a tip to make sure that you're never on the wrong layer, at least not on the photo layer. So I locked it. Again, I just swiped it over and then I pressed the lock button. And now there's a little lock icon next to it. So now I'm going to trace on top of this. If it's hard for you to see, what you can do is you can go and if you click on like the little N, so I'll unlock this first. And I click on the little N, I can take the opacity of this down. If it's really bright for you, then taking the opacity down and changing the color might make it easier for you to see, might make it easier for your lines to stand out. So I changed the background color to black, I lowered my opacity, and I'm just gonna lock that again. So now I'm gonna go into my layer 2, and again, I really wanna figure out which book is on the horizon line. That will help me, so I'm going to label this horizon line. And if you recall, the horizon line is where you can't see the top or the bottom of a book or a box. So my top book over here, I can see the bottom of it. This one I can't see the top or the bottom, but this one I can see the top. So I know that my horizon line has to be somewhere over there. So I'm just going to mark in my horizon line is on the second book. Sometimes it's easy to tell exactly where it is. Sometimes it's kind of harder to tell where it is. Put it there and mark that horizon line. That's just so I know which one to start out with. So there's 3 books. There's the top, the middle, and the center, or you might have boxes, whatever. I'm going to name this, I don't know, middle? I think that might be the easiest. So top, middle, bottom. So I'm going to name this the middle one. And that's the one I'm going to trace first. So I'm going to pick a new color. I'll do red for no particular reason. And I'm going to start tracing it. So just to double check, I am using, out of my brushes, I've picked painting and the round brush. I like that one. If you set it to something a little bit smaller, then that'll work for me. Other things that might work for you are if you go into like inking has some good ones. If you go to the technical pen, if you like, you can use the sketching ones like the HB or 6B pencil. But for me, I like how clean the round brush looks. So I like to start out the same way that I normally do. So I start with like the center line. I'm gonna do my left and my right sides. And I'm kind of simplifying this. So I do want like the corners to look a little bit rounder than before. So I'm trying to trace it like as best as I can. And I will be adding some details to this. So you can still hold your lines and they'll straighten out for you. A lot of the times when you have actual boxes in real life, The corners of them are just slightly rounder because they get beaten up a little bit. They don't want the boxes to stab you usually. Just kind of happens. So now I have all these corners kind of figured out. There's also that detail that's in there. So I have this subtle kind of tape line going down over here that I probably want to draw, as well as this ribbon that goes through like that. So I'm going to trace that. And that's really all the detail I want. The ribbon actually extends just a little bit past this, so I'm going to draw that. And there you go. Now if I double check, I'm still on that middle layer. I can uncheck on my photo and see what it looks like without anything else. So when I do want to draw this, that will help me focus on one object at a time. I can see the horizon line going through that. If that bothers you, you can just get rid of it for now. So I don't want to have to stare at it the whole time. But now I'm going to trace the rest of them. So after this, I can rename this the top, and I'm going to trace that one. So the tracing part is pretty simple. You just want to make sure that you're switching up what colors you use. Again, that's mostly to keep this easy for you. So you can pick the colors that look nice to you. Doesn't matter. You're going to see when you're tracing things like the books that there's a lot of round edges. We've been simplifying our books, and now that we're tracing them, you can really see what the lines actually look like and get a better idea of how you want to draw these. So having a nice like big picture will definitely help with that. So there's these kind of ridges that are here, this like little bend that happens with book covers. There is still that like double underline that I normally see. There's just some extra kind of area where the pages don't quite reach. So here are some pages. They have the slightest little texture to them. So that's one side of this. Like I said, you'll kind of see that there's more natural ways to do this. So let's just hurry and get that all together. So holding the lines to make them straighter will definitely help you. We want to notice a bunch of like the corners that interact with each other. So you'll see over here, there's like a corner that interacts. So I'll just kind of bold those little points where I see interaction happening. So where they're touching, I'm making those a little bit bolder so that I can see them and they stand out and I can make my notes on those. So again, I'm just going to double check what it looks like without the photo behind it. That's good. If you want to, you can add the pages, but this is just a tracing, so it doesn't really matter. Last one, new layer, rename it. That one's going to be the bottom box. So you have a top, middle, bottom. You can name them first, second, third. It doesn't really matter to me again. And I'll pick this color. Okay, so double check you're in the right layer, and I can see this corner over here. I really want to make like a big deal out of any corners that are like touching. Again, because those are things that'll help me draw this when it's on paper instead. So yes, we're going to end up with kind of a nice traced Procreate drawing, but ultimately we want to be able to do this on paper. So this tracing is just a tool to help us in the future, because all these angles are kind of hard to see if you're just measuring them and you're not really making any marks. If you have an area that goes through, so you can like stop right there and then come out the other side, or what you can do, and you'll see me do this, is I'll just like go all the way through to the edge, hold it straight, and then I'll take my eraser, make it real small, and just kind of adjust there. So I took my eraser there. Then I can add those points back in where it's touching. So I know that I want like my red corner to go a little bit lower than that. Okay, make that Again, it's not super straight, so just do your best to get as close as you can. Trace it well. I have this corner that kind of touches right there. And then it's not straight, but there's a little dip that occurs. There's like a little ridge in the back over there also that I'd want. So I'll draw that too. Okay, so there I have a tracing of all of my items now. So again, if I take my photo away, you can see that. Okay, now that we have our drawing looking really nice, you can see that I took the horizon line and I just erased it through so that it doesn't go through our box anymore, and that looks nice. And then we're going to add notes on top of this. So you're going to go into a new layer and you're going to rename it notes. And here are some things that I think you should look out for. So we're going to color the tops or the bottoms of things. We're going to point out any small corners and find any corners that align or touch. We'll save the coloring stuff for the end. So first of all, I'm just going to point out any small corners. So there aren't very many here. It's just this one right there that I want to point out. So that's just a small corner, and I want to make sure that I don't forget that it's going to help make the bottom of this. So that's going to make the bottom of that. All right. Then I want to find any corners that are aligned or that are touching. So you're going to have to maybe use your ruler for this and see if there's anything that aligns. So if you take your ruler, pretend I have one. If I go like this and make a straight line across, you can see that that top corner and like the middle are kind of similar. So over here and over here, those kind of align. So I'll make a line through them, and then I'll take my eraser, set it kind of small, and I will do this little dash thing. So now it looks like a dashed line or a dotted line. So I know that those are aligned together. See if you can find any places that are like that. And some of them can be taller or like going vertically, so some of them can be horizontal or vertical. Also have this spot over here. These corners also kind of align. So again, I'll draw my line there, and then I'll take my eraser and I'll turn that into a dotted line. And I can see that those line up. Again, you want to see if any of them do. That's a little higher than that one, so that one doesn't. This corner kind of lines up with all of those too, so you can just add that one in there. So if they're similar enough, then definitely feel free to do that. Okay, I think those are all the corners that I can see on here that would really line up, but if you look a little bit harder and you find something, then that's great, and you should totally go for it. Now that I've got any corners that line up or align, I want to see if there are ones that touch. You can switch colors if you want to for that. I'm going to keep the same one though. And I'm going to point to them. So that corner touches right there, so I'll point. And I want to differentiate it from that one, so I just made that one a little bit darker. So that touches, there's this area that goes in right there. This one is like overlapping, so I want to make sure that I have that one. I have this corner and this one. So I'm really just like putting dots on all my corners so that they're easier for me to see a little bit later when I'm comparing them to each other. So that's all that really needs to happen here. There's another one right there that's touching. So bringing my attention to all those spots that I really want to get as accurate as possible. So those are the notes. Like I said, we need to color the tops or the bottoms. For this, you're going to make another layer at the kind of bottom of this, so it can be above the horizon line. So click on the horizon line, and then we're going to add a layer, and we're going to name that tops and bottoms. Oops. And for this, you can use the same color that you've been using, or you can use a different one. But what's really important is that you're going to click on that little N, and you're going to take the opacity down. So I like it like around here. I can still see it around 60, 70, 50, whatever. It doesn't really matter. You can use the same color, or you can switch the colors that you've been using. So I'll keep it the same so it's easy for you to see. But I want to color in the bottom of anything that's above the horizon line. So that's easy for me to see. If you accidentally go too high, then you just take your eraser and clean it up. Oops. So now I have my eraser, I'll go over these lines and I'll clean them up, and that's the bottom of it. Not really feeling that color combination, so I can show you how to fix that in a quick second. But what's really important is that I know that that's the bottom of that book. And below the horizon line, you want to get the top of anything. So again, I just lowered my opacity down, and then I'm coloring in here. And that helps me mark out the top and the bottom of this. Like I said, I'm not super feeling this color. Kind of ugly. You can just lower the opacity down more. Maybe then it won't be so obnoxious, so we can try that. What you can also do is you can just switch to a different color. So if you found out like, oh hey, that one looks ugly, you can just color on top of it with a different one instead. Or what you can do is you can go into that layer, and I'm going to click on it. So click on the little picture where I hit rename usually. I'll hit on what's called alpha lock. And if I hit on alpha lock and I color over it again, so I'll just take the purple color. It locks it so that I'm not coloring outside of the line. So whatever is already filled in, it'll fill in, but whatever isn't, it will still remain blank. So that's just an option for you. Again, if it's just standing out too much, you can take your opacity down a little bit more. And there you go. So now I've like colored in where the top and the bottom are. A little bit easier for me to see. And those are the notes I'd like you to make. You can definitely make some more on there. So if you want to write down anything extra like I did before, then you can. But this is all that's really necessary. So color the tops and bottoms, point out any small corners, and find any corners that align or touch. And you do those with a dotted line. Okay. Once you're done, you're going to save this onto your camera roll. So let's write our names down. So I'll go back into my notes and I'll write our name. Ooh, big. That can be anywhere. It can be at the top or the bottom as long as I see it. And then whatever the date is. If you would like to, you can just keep it plain like this, or you can bring your books back in. Again, you can click on the little N and lower the opacity if you just unlock it. So you can keep the photo in there just kind of subtly, or you can just get rid of it. It doesn't matter. And you will save that. So you're gonna share it as a PNG. As usual, you're gonna save the image and then add that and turn that in.